Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, some of the most central and foundational concepts in the realm of physics are found right here in the first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, time, God, force, created energy, the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. Now, notice the Bible doesn't try to prove God's existence. It simply expects you to use common sense. If you were to buy any of the following, like a computer, an espresso machine, a vehicle, or any of the home appliances, you would expect to find an instruction manual or a user guide with each and every one of these. However, none of these appliances, none of these items would include a pamphlet trying to prove that the item itself exists. It just expects you to use your brain, to use common sense, to understand these things are real. Well, the same is true for the Bible. It starts out, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It just expects you to know there is a God and he created all things. That's why Romans 1:20 says, "For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." Now, there's an inclusio here. An inclusio, I got this from Google. It's a literary and biblical device where an author repeats a similar word, phrase, or theme at both the beginning and end of a section. And obviously, we have Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, so there's a chapter break here, but that chapter break is unfortunate because the creation account, the very first section of the Bible, goes all the way through chapter 1 and into chapter 2, verse 4. And so an inclusio starts at, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And he says basically the same thing, tells you exactly what just happened. Then he concludes the inclusio in Genesis 2:4. "These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens." And so we start with Genesis 1:1. We end with Genesis 2:4. And right there in the middle is verses 2 all the way through chapter 2, verses 3. And so this is an inclusio. In Genesis 1:1, again, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I want you to notice the word heavens is plural. Now, why would that be? It's because the Bible refers to three distinct heavens. The sky or the atmosphere is the first one. We see that in Genesis 1:20. It says, "Let the birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens." So in the sky, obviously, you can also look at 1 Kings 14:11. But we have the first heaven, as we would refer to it from a biblical standpoint, is the sky or the atmosphere. The second heaven would be outer space. Genesis 1:14 says, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night." So we have the sky and the atmosphere, we have outer space, and then we have heaven, as we would refer to it, God's place of residence, the place where people can see the Lord. 2 Corinthians 12:2 refers to the third heaven. Paul was actually caught up there through whether it was a vision or physically didn't know, but he was caught up to the third heaven, and that is the dwelling place of God. That's paradise. And so Genesis chapter 1:1 is the summary of the whole passage that we are going to find from Genesis 1:1 all the way to Genesis 2:4. And it is the origin of all things that is held up within this one verse. Everything that exists is because of the truth of this verse. The act of creation itself was the greatest miracle to ever take place. If you can make it to this verse, just the very first verse of the Bible, if you believe this verse, then it's going to be very easy to believe the rest of the Bible, because God literally created everything out of nothing. He spoke it all into existence, and he brought it all forth by his divine power. And so the act of creation was the greatest miracle to ever take place, and the entire Bible rests upon this very foundation. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.